Welcome to my 1/6 scale ASMUS Lord of the Rings collection video. Today we're going to go through these two detolfs, the whole collection, which includes all of the Fellowship, and various different figures from Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogy. There is quite a few figures to get through, but I think that it's going to be quite an interesting video for people who either don't have any of these figures or people who collect them and haven't seen some close up. So let's start with shelf 1. We have Gandalf, Aragorn, Frodo and old Bilbo. Let's go in closer on Gandalf to start with. So this is the latest head sculpt from ASMUS for Gandalf. And they've done various different versions of Gandalf over the years. I should mention that if you don't know much about ASMUS and their Lord of the Rings figures, they always come with die-cast metal weapons. So you can see his metal sword there. Fantastic detail on all the clothing and all of the little accessories. In fact, let's have a look at his feet. You can even see shoelaces. I never thought I'd see Gandalf's shoelaces, but I found that quite interesting. But yeah, the head sculpt is amazing. I mean, really amazing. I know people talk about the inart one, but I personally think this one is better and a lot cheaper. The hat itself is the hat from the previous version of Gandalf. The previous version of Gandalf and the newest version are identical, only the head sculpt is different. It's this head sculpt on the new version. And the hat comes with a plastic version of the hat that's more sculpted, because people didn't like this hat for some reason in the previous version. But I think it works really well. I think it just fits nicely, and I like that kind of cloth material hat. I think it just fits better than a sculpted one. So let's move over to Frodo. There's been various different versions of Frodo over the years from ASMUS. This is the latest version of Frodo. However, I've given him the Fellowship cloak that came with the very first version. And of course you can see the die-cast Sting sword there. Because I wanted all of my Fellowship in my collection to have the Fellowship cloaks. And I think this is a great likeness to Elijah Wood and to Frodo in general. So moving over to Aragorn, one of my favorite figures. Now this is a bit controversial. This figure, and subsequently all of the Aragorn figures that ASMUS have done, are all kind of different. They've got different versions of him from different movies, and this is the slim version of the Ranger Aragorn. And I've kind of mixed two versions here together, and also you can see he's got the metal sword, which is really nice. I love these die-cast weapons that they do. But this rooted hair head sculpt came with the slim version, not with the regular version. And this cape is an upgraded cape. It's a newer version. It's obviously the Fellowship cloak that I wanted to match with the other ones. So my wife actually contacted ASMUS and asked them for an updated cloak, and they were nice enough to send it to us. And these accessories here on his back, including the bow, the arrows and the quiver, they're all from the non-slim version. So essentially if you get the slim version, you get the rooted hair head sculpt and everything you see here apart from what he's wearing on his back. And the cape is a little bit older, so it's a slightly different cape with a slightly different material. This one has like a wire in it, and so you can put the hood up. But look at this head sculpt. I know it's really hard to get that likeness right for this character, but I think they did quite a good job on this one. So moving on to the last figure in this shelf, old Bilbo. Now I think this is a really, really nice looking figure. And I think the tailoring, like with all of ASMUS's figures, is just phenomenal. And I think the funny thing about this figure is, though, when you first see it, you think, oh, that looks just like the actor Ian Holm. But then if you put it side by side with an actual screenshot from the movie, there's something that just doesn't quite look the same. I don't know if it's because of the hair and the hairline. I mean, it's a fantastic figure. I mean, look at the details in the skin, the wrinkles. They're all amazing figures. So that is shelf 1. So moving on to shelf 2, we have Gimli, Legolas, and of course, Sam. And I just want to point out that I've tried to get the best version of each of these characters because there's multiple versions. So for Legolas, for example, there's a few different versions of him, and this is the version that's the latest. It comes with the Battle of Helm's Deep kind of backdrop, which isn't in this particular shelf. And he's got the sort of rooted hair there at the back and then sculpted hair at the top. And to me, that's the best version. And it's the newest version too. But you can see all these details in the clothing and all of the accessories. Of course, he's got the die-cast sword. He comes with his daggers and everything as well. And if you look carefully, you can see all the little details on the bow too. Like there's some real nice little details in these figures. The head sculpt looks like Orlando Bloom from some angles, slightly off on other angles. But yeah, really nice figure. And if I kind of come back and take a look, you can see that base that he's on actually came with the non-slim version of the Aragorn. So I kind of took that base and a couple of extras and put it with the slim version with the rooted hair. Moving on to one of my favorites, Gimli. Wow, this is a grail and it's hard to get. Well, not that hard to get anymore, but it's very expensive. And the only reason it's not hard to get is because people know it's worth a lot. So there's a lot on eBay. But, you know, people are going to overcharge for it. I would say hold out, wait to get it. Try and get it new if you can. It's been out of print for a while. It is an older figure, but it has some amazing features. Look at that head sculpt and the details on the helmet. Look at the rooted beard. It does have rooted hair as well underneath the helmet, I should mention. Some of the details on the armor. Because it's an older figure, the sort of chainmail is, I'm trying to focus there, the chainmail is not like some of the newer chainmail, which they've really improved upon. And of course the die-cast axe. He actually comes with like 5 axes. But yeah, absolutely amazing figure. Really wonderful. And Sam, this is probably the best version I've ever seen of Samwise Gamgee in any scale. And there's some really nice facial details there. The hair is a little bit sort of plasticky, I guess, because it's sculpted. But look at that face. That's crazy detailed. Like they got that little overbite that's like perfect. And of course, this is the very first version of Samwise. They did 2. The second version I feel is inferior. And like I said, I wanted to get the best version of each character. And of course, the hairy feet there. He does come with some great accessories, like this little leather sort of water pouch and back. And then he's got his sheath and sword. This sword is the only sword I know of, the main sword, for a character of ASMUS that's not made of metal. If I just turn him around, just give me 1 second, you can actually see he comes with lots of little extras on his backpack, which is really nice. So yeah, that is shelf 2, some fantastic figures. I would highly recommend the first version of Sam that you just saw. The second one, the head sculpt just doesn't live up to expectations, I'm afraid, at least not in my opinion. So keeping in theme with the Fellowship, coming down to shelf 3, we have Merry, Pippin and Boromir. 3 amazing figures. And I should mention that Sam we just looked at is the only version that comes with the Fellowship cloak as well. And it's also worth mentioning that the grails of this collection so far that we've seen are Gimli, Samwise and Merry and Pippin here. They're all expensive and hard to find. But let's take a closer look. So let's start with this fantastic figure of Boromir. And what a great head sculpt as well. The likeness to me is pretty good. And of course he comes with his Horn of Gondor. This figure is really well tailored. The materials and everything, even his dagger is die cast, as well as his sword, which I'll show you in a moment because it's a really nice sword. Little bits of mud and dirt, and he's got split cut boot design, which is really helpful for posing. But yeah, really nice figure. And if we come in closer, there you go. Now you can see the quality of these die-cast swords. But yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the details on this, they're really well done. Like the gauntlets, the tunic, even the little brooch on the top of the Fellowship cloak there. And yes, it's a wired hood. This is the latest version of Boromir. There's been a couple. There has been a rooted hair one, but I didn't particularly like the face sculpt in comparison to this one. I thought this was better. So let's move over to Merry and Pippin. And in case you're wondering, they are sat on this log, which I got from a pet store here in Canada. And let's start with Merry, I think. I personally think this looks like the actor. I think it's a great likeness. He looks moody, yes, the expression may not be to everyone's taste, but I think the likeness is there. And there's two versions of Merry and Pippin. The newer versions of these, I think, are not as good. And they remade these head sculpts because people complained about these two. And I don't think the new ones look better. I think these do. So like I said, I wanted to get the best versions of each character, and I feel like these are the best versions. And of course they got their Fellowship cloaks on, which don't come with the new versions, I should add. So if you want the Fellowship cloaks, you'll either have to buy them separately or get these versions. But I think the likeness on this Pippin is really nice likeness to Billy Boyd. I love these two actors. I think they're phenomenal. And especially Dominic Monaghan. I've followed his work for years. And I just think these are great representations of these characters. And I would recommend them. They are grails. They are expensive. They are old. They're numbered figures as well. I don't think they made many, either 1,000 or 1,500. But, and I would actually suggest getting this as well. I think I got it from PetSmart. And it wasn't very expensive, but they work so well on it. So yeah, hopefully you like these figures too. Let's move on to the next shelf. So this is where the Fellowship ends, and we move into a mix of Hobbit and Lord of the Rings figures. On the left we have Thorin, Oakenshield. On the right we have Tauriel. And in the middle we have, of course, Gollum. So let's get in and take a closer look. I'm going to start with Gollum because this is an absolutely mind-blowingly good figure. You know, in the 1/6 scale kind of community, there hasn't really been an articulate Gollum other than a kind of kid's toy by Toy Biz in this scale years ago. And this is a very recent release for ASMUS. They did Gollum and Smeagol, and I do have the Smeagol, I'll show you soon. But they've done a really good job of getting around the whole idea of the legs, because they come with these separate legs, or you can have bendable legs that have limited bending. You don't want to bend them kind of this far because they will break. So they just gave you two sets of legs. And the head comes with rolling eyeballs, so you can move his eyes around. Obviously he's got a little bit of rooted hair there. Which, my only disappointment is the hair is kind of white instead of black, which I think it should be. But the arms are bendable, they have sort of wires in them. And if you get the 2-pack, you get this diorama base as well, which also has a little fish in there. And of course you get little accessories like this fish and the one ring. But yeah, this Gollum, really highly recommend this. This is one of ASMUS's great figures. And talking of great figures, Thorin Oakenshield. What a likeness! And the rooted hair, you know, the clothing with all of the fur. Of course you get the weapons. I think this weapon here, the Goblin Cleaver, is die-cast. And it's possible that this one is plastic. I can't remember. But the level of detail in this figure, I mean, just mind-blowing. They've come a long way since the Gimli. You know, it's been a few years difference between the Gimli and Thorin. So to do a dwarf, they've just improved on every tiny little aspect. And I think this is a really underrated figure, and I would definitely recommend it if you're a fan of The Hobbit. Moving on to Tauriel. She was a very limited piece. There's been complaints about the face sculpt, the head sculpt, whatever you want to call it. I think from some angles, like this angle, looks a lot like Evangeline Lilly, and from some angles, not so much. But as a figure of the character, I mean, the details, the overall presence, really, really nice. And this would be a grail for some people. It certainly falls into that category in terms of rarity and price. But yeah, I mean, this is not easy to get hold of. And I actually think it's really, really nice. The one thing that I didn't realize until I kind of looked at this figure was that quiver is huge. And I didn't realize it in the movie, and then when I went back and watched it, it is actually huge. But yeah, great set of 3 figures here for this shelf. Moving on to shelf 5, this is an interesting one because we've got Galadriel, young Bilbo, and then of course we have Saruman. And Saruman was a good guy his whole life up until Lord of the Rings. So I've put him here together as a good guy. But these 3 figures are just outstanding. So let's get in and take a closer look. Let's start with Galadriel. And this is a beautiful figure. It's really well done. This is a more recent figure as well from ASMUS. It didn't come out that long ago. And you can even see that ring is a very, very detailed, small, dainty ring. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer to show you. This is the level of detail they go to at ASMUS. And the likeness is there most of the time. I think right now it looks just like Cate Blanchett. Sometimes, and I don't think it's the figure, just sometimes the lighting when it's in a slightly different position, like there, slightly not quite like the actress, but generally really, really nice. And you can get this in a version with the mirror, which is really nice. This is a really nice little diorama piece. Hopefully you can see it a little bit there in the background. Maybe if I pull out you can see. There you go. You can see a little bit more. But yeah, that's definitely worth getting if you can get the base with it. So, Bilbo. I think this facial sculpt looks just like Martin Freeman. Now, I've said I do have a complaint with the Hobbit hair. It always looks a bit plasticky, kind of looks like he's made of chocolate. But really my complaint with the hair for this figure is not the sculpting, it's just that it looks too poofy, too big. It's not close enough to his head. However, I think this figure is amazing. It's a really nice figure. And I should just point out, in all fairness, the staff that he's holding is from old Bilbo, from the old Bilbo figure. It did not come with this figure. This figure does come with a die-cast version of Sting. He's just not wearing it right now. And he does have a little backpack as well, which I think is really nice. Nice touch. It's nice to see the old Bilbo side by side with the young Bilbo to see the differences. But yeah, fantastic figure. That one is kind of hard to get now as well. Now, Saruman. This is, in my opinion, let's pull back a little bit. In my opinion, a fantastic figure. However, it is a grail. It is hard to get. It is expensive, like really expensive now. And they used to do at ASMUS these sort of sculpted beards with rooted hair. So they did a version of Gandalf that came with a sculpted beard and rooted hair. But now obviously they've moved on to rooted beards. But this is the only version they ever did of Saruman. And I think it looks amazing. And also, there was two sort of like versions you could get at the time, which is this, or with the Palanthea and the pedestal. And I do have the Palanthea and pedestal, I just don't display him with it because it kind of alludes to him being the bad guy, and also there's not really any room in this display. So yeah, as a shelf, these three I think are really, really nice. And in case you're wondering, all of these sort of background bits and pieces I either got from Dollarama or from the pet store. Coming over to shelf 6, this is a really standout, kind of impactful shelf. When you see this in person, it just kind of pops. And this is Elrond in his sort of battle armor from the beginning of Lord of the Rings when it's set in the past. And obviously you've got two of the warriors. You've got the Elven Archer on the left and the Elven Warrior on the right. And they are different. So let's get in closer and I will show you why. So coming in a bit closer, you can see the Elven Archer. He has his very own face sculpt, which is a nice touch. And he comes with a lot of accessories. He actually comes with a lot more than the Elven Warrior. So if you were going to get one over the other, I would suggest looking at the Archer first, because the Archer does come with a pike and a sword and all of his kind of archery gear as well. Now the armor has been a kind of point of contention in the community. People think it looks quite plasticky. I personally think it looks fine in this lighting. However, in some lighting, not so much. And you can have his head as hood up without the helmet as well, which is nice. Moving over, and we'll do Elrond last. This is the Elven Warrior, and he comes with a big die-cast sword. Now, something I want to point out here that I don't think anyone has ever mentioned, and it's something my wife and I laugh about a lot every time we talk about this figure, is, and of course obviously the armor and everything is mostly the same as the Elven Archer, but look at this head sculpt. Is that not Newt Scamander? And when you take off the helmet, it really looks like Newt Scamander. It's kind of funny. If you want to make a custom of that actor, I would look at getting this head sculpt because, yeah, it does look a little bit too much like him. And over to the main event, Elrond. And oh, wow, what can I say? Hugo Weaving is just in the room. This is amazing. I do not like that little neckline there. It's a little bit confusing to your eye, but I've kind of covered up with the hair. You can see he's got the painted hair on top, the sculpted, and then it turns into the rooted hair as it comes down. But just amazing head sculpt. And this is fastly or quickly becoming a grail for people. It's shooting up in price. It's getting more and more scarce. So if you're going to get it, I would look at getting it sooner rather than later. If you want to buy it, of course. And there's some nice sculpted details in there. I mean, look at that. That's nice. It's not the most complicated of figures. Obviously, he's got very similar armor to the other two. But, wow, you want it just for the head sculpt. And the impact, he has a different cape made with a different material. I don't know why. He does come with a sword as well. He doesn't have a load of accessories, to be honest, but just an amazing figure in general. And all three of them together, very striking. Like, just having them standing there together, all three, really, really nice. So coming down to shelf 7, I will admit this is a little bit of an eclectic mix of characters, but I need to display them, and this was the best way to do it, or at least I thought. So you've got Eomir on the left, Faramir on the right, and of course Smeagol in the middle. And the background base and the ladder are from the Helm's Deep version of Legolas that you saw earlier. So let's take a closer look. Starting with Eomir. I mean, wow, what a head sculpt. And this also comes with rooted hair, and if you look carefully, his helmet is rooted as well. That has horsehair. I don't even know what to say about this figure. There's so many details on it. And it's so good. I just think it's wonderful. And of course you've got the die-cast sword. Let's take a closer look at that. And they did 3 figures from the Rohirrim. They did Theoden, Eomir, and Eowyn. And they're all becoming hard to get and all ridiculously priced. I would say that at this point, Theoden and Eowyn are sort of becoming grails, whereas Eomir is a little easier to get and cheaper because it's still available from ASMUS. Currently out of stock sometimes, but if you keep checking, it kind of goes in stock once a week at the moment. Moving on to Faramir, I think this head sculpt captures him really, really well. He does have sculpted hair, which I kind of think with the length of his hair would have worked better if it was rooted, but it actually looks really nice. And with his hood up and his bow drawn like this, to me he's kind of like a representation of Robin Hood. And look at this kind of like fake leather armor. It just looks like leather, but it's actually sculpted, which is amazing. And of course you've got the metal sword and some amazing tailoring as always. Does not have split cut boots, unfortunately. They're sort of straight. But the details on this, I mean, this is, if we're just going purely on aesthetics and how a figure looks and discount, you know, how important the character is to the story or if they're a main character, this is one of my favorites because I think it's so well made. Aesthetically, it looks really, really nice and very detailed. So, moving on to Smeagol. And I'm sorry the lighting is a little bit bright. I'll try and turn it down slightly. There you go. Amazing head sculpt, just like Gollum. Obviously not as popular or as impactful as Gollum, but still a fantastic figure. And this one also has rolling eyes. And if you look carefully, I don't know if you could see this on the Gollum, but you can see all these tiny little paws and wrinkles. There's just so many little details to be seen here. And of course, same kind of body. And these are the legs that come with it that bend instead of the pre-bent legs, as it were. I mean, you have to put articulation in. So there is going to be seams at the shoulders and the wrists. There's nothing much you can do about that. But yeah, as is. Amazing figure. Last but by no means least, we've got shelf 8, which starts off with the Nazgul on the left, Gothmog in the middle, and of course the Witch King on the right. So let's take a closer look at these amazing detailed figures. So first let's take a look at what I think is a really underrated figure, and that is the Nazgul. ASMUS have done a few different versions of this, but this is the latest version with all die-cast armor. And of course the sword is die-cast as well. There's various different layers of the clothing. The only complaint is, see these edges? They're a little too simple cut for me. I'd like more details in those edges. However, generally, as a figure goes, this is way nicer than I expected. I saw it in a store, it was posed badly, it was lit badly, and I wasn't impressed. And then I saw another couple of videos and I thought, you know what, I'm going to get it. And when we got it, my wife and I, we both thought, oh, this does look a lot better now in person. So yeah, great figure, currently available, and really, really nice. We'll do Gothmog last because he's so cool. The Twilight Witch King. This is a very underrated figure as well. Also, fairly recent. Of course, die-cast weapons. Again, the rips in the clothing, a little too simple for me. I'd like more rips, more detail. But as a figure, whew, this one has some presence. And it looks really nice. Look at the details on the face. And of course he has rooted hair. This crown is made of metal. And when they put out the first pictures, you could see the metal kind of like brushed around the edges. So some people have customized that by kind of brushing the paint off or just adding little bits of silver. But yeah, just all in all, a really, really nice figure. But now, Gothmog. What a head sculpt. This is a grail. This costs a lot of money. We managed to get it because we traded some things into a store and it was reasonably priced. There's a couple of things about this figure I want to mention. First of all, a lot of these panels are held on by pleather straps. And when we got this, all of the pleather straps had wilted under the armor areas. So I had to fix every single one of them. I think there was 9. And I had to meticulously glue the straps back in. You can see it's wilted a little bit there. So that is something to be seriously aware of with this figure, because I just touched it and all of these, like this one here, this panel here, this panel, this one, every one I touched just fell apart. That being said, this figure is amazing. It has such a presence, such a level of detail. Sorry, the lighting is a little bit dark. I'll try and rectify that. Maybe you can see a little bit more details. I mean, look at the teeth. That's crazy. Really, really, really cool figure that has a lot of presence, a lot of detail. And this, I think, was the very first figure they did. It might have been the second figure. And it comes with this base, including this sort of cadaver over here. And he comes with a couple of weapons. One's die-cast, which is kind of very, very heavy. And one is plastic and has sort of blood on this sword. But yeah, that is the 8th and not 4th, I can't count, the 8th and final shelf. Just to adjust the lighting there so you can see it a little better. And these are 3 amazing figures, and this is my whole collection.